This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. Today's show is being recorded at the Justice for All Women's March in downtown Ventura, and I'm talking to California 26th District Congresswoman Julia Brownley, who has just spoken at the rally. Hello, Congresswoman.
Hello, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer a few questions.
Thanks for having me.
Congresswoman, this year is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. Could you tell us how you will be marking this important anniversary, and then perhaps tell us why it's personally important to you?
Well, it's clearly a very important milestone in the history of our country. And as I said in the speech, it took 100 years for us to get there. And now for 100 years, women have had the right to vote. And so it's clearly very important. And it means a great deal to me. I can't imagine 100 years ago earlier and not being able to, my sons, my spouse all go to vote, but I can't express my viewpoint. And I think since that time, since women have had the opportunity to vote, it's impacted elections, it's impacted politicians across the country and who's being elected. And at the end of the day, I think women really, they have a common sense approach. They understand a family unit, and obviously very, very capable. And there's clearly, when I said earlier in the speech, when women vote, we win in terms of what our priorities are. We have more women in Congress than we've ever had before, and I think that changes the dynamic, and it's a very important change.
Someone told me women are the carriers of civilization. She's what women's studies teacher.
I think that's a great way to put it.
We really should be,
Yes.
It's at least equal.
Yeah.
So are there going to be a few events taking place in Washington, D.C. this year?
There will be many events in Washington, and I don't know all of the details of all of the events, but it is something that we will be celebrating. I'm part of the Women's Caucus in Washington, and we certainly are planning some activities. And as I said in the speech, is that we will, I don't know if you've watched the State of the Union in the last couple of years.
Oh, yes.
But we've all been in white, and we plan on wearing white again. And part of wearing white, that symbolizes a lot of different things, but it certainly symbolizes the work the suffragettes did for our country and moving forward and making sure the president knows that we're here.
Okay. So as you said, it took nearly 100 years of protests for women to achieve the right to vote back in 1920. And now, 100 years later, after we got the vote, the women's rights movement is still fighting for true equality under the law, which the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, would guarantee. Now, in talking to a lot of women, some women believe this is already the law of the land, but it's not, is it?
It is absolutely not. And as I said, there were 207 members of Congress that signed an amicus brief last week to repeal Roe v. Wade. There is a Supreme Court case coming up, I think probably next week, to take away reproductive rights, to take away birth control, there's a court case that says employers, universities who have control over their health insurance plans can call religion as a reason why they would not provide birth control to their employees, and this has gone all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will be weighing in on that. So the point is that we are constantly fighting and defending the rights that we have achieved. If the ERA became the 28th Amendment of our Constitution, then that would be in our Constitution, and we would have that kind of protection, and we wouldn't have to keep doing what we have been doing over decades of continuing to fight for issues that we have won, Roe v. Wade, being a very good case to that. So we plan on actually putting Roe v. Wade into law, to ratify that decision, so at least it will be law and not just a Supreme Court decision that can be overturned. But that's what the ERA will do, is provide that protection, that women will be protected and equally protected under the law.
And we don't have that now, and we need to do that. Okay, well, you answered my Roe v. Wade question. Thank you for being ahead of me. So, women should really be worried right now. Do you think the established law will hold?
On the Roe v. Wade?
On Roe v. Wade,
well, that's
right.
the point I was trying to make. It's not really established law. It's a precedent. It's a decision by the Supreme Court. So, it's constantly being eaten away through, there are cases about hospitals and doctors who perform abortions have to be associated with a particular hospital. And these are all out there to not talk about abortion directly, but really to take away abortion rights. Title 10, which is the funding mechanism for Planned Parenthood and the like. All of that is being eaten away back in Washington. We're fighting over those things all of the time. And so, Roe v. Wade was an important decision, a very important decision, but as I said, it's being attacked in these sort of vicious ways in states across the United States. We don't have to worry about it here in California, but when you look at other states across the country, they're trying to overturn it.
Right,
in their own way.
In very subtle kinds of ways.
Very subtle
that
kinds
don't
of
make
ways.
the news,
Correct.
I imagine.
That is correct.
Yeah. So sexual harassment has been very much in the media the last few years, and one of the many issues women are out here protesting about today. We don't have time to address all the issues you've worked on, but could you tell us about the legislation you've introduced regarding the sexual harassment of women in VA hospitals?
Absolutely. So actually I have a bill called the Deborah Sampson bill that actually has passed the House of Representatives, and that particular bill has a lot of issues in it that relate to women veterans and finding equity and health care services and benefits that the VA provides. But one of the issues has been around sexual harassment. The VA has, like all federal agencies, has training for their employees around sexual harassment, but the kind of sexual harassment that my bill addresses is that women veterans, largest cohort within the veteran community, more and more women are going to the VA to access their health care, and they're getting assaulted or harassed by other veterans who are there for similar services, and so there is no training around that. And so this is a bill that basically says to provide some training, but to also provide training to say, if you see something, you say something, and to try to begin to create a zero tolerance atmosphere around that through education and other kinds of things. But it can't be tolerated, and women veterans, when that kind of thing happens, they're fearful of going back to the VA, and they have a right
to go,
a right to go,
right.
And so we're working very, very hard to make sure that women have, all of their health care rights, reproductive rights within the VA. I just introduced a bill last week saying that abortion counseling should be legal within the VA. Right now, a doctor cannot advise or discuss abortion options, and that's a very critical part in terms of a woman's reproductive health. So when doctors take a HIPAA oath saying we're going to do the very, very, very best for a Hippocratic oath to do the very, very best that we can for our patients, and to exclude that piece of it is just simply wrong.
Right. Well, that just sounds like a really good bill to have. So women, another issue here, women are disproportionately, and you mentioned this, represented on boards and government positions nationally. I wonder what motivated you to run for public office?
Well, I get that question a lot. And actually, the honest answer is that I was always interested in politics. I was a political science major as an undergraduate. But my daughter, who is now 33 years old and is married and speaks 3 different languages and does humanitarian work in Africa, when she was a little girl, she was not reading. I was a panicked parent, and it turns out she was dyslexic. She still is dyslexic, and you always are. But I needed to advocate for services for her within the school district where she was attending. And, I sort of saw the good, bad, and the ugly. This was a school district that people moved into the area to have their children go to school there. And so I was inspired then to run for school board to say, in terms of what I experienced, I think some things need to change. And so I ran for the school board locally and served on the school board for 12 years. And then there was an opportunity for me to move on to the state legislature, and I did. I ran, I won. I ended up chairing the education committee in Sacramento for the state legislature, and then there was this opportunity to run for Congress, and I took it, and here I am.
Oh, well, we have to thank your daughter for getting you into it. What a wonderful outcome.
Yes.
So what skills did you develop in your previous work in sales and marketing that helped you in your current job?
Well, I really enjoyed that work. Marketing is sort of it's an interesting field, and there's similarities certainly in terms of the job, that I certainly am doing. And that's, about sort of branding and marketing. You're around people, you're talking about issues, you believe in your products, and similarly, in this job, you're around people,
selling your bills.
You're selling your bills, and trying to brand them in terms of their importance, and so I think there are many similarities, but. Also, I worked with a lot of people. I managed a lot of people. Got a lot of, a lot of skills developed during the time that I worked in private industry.
Okay, well, thank you so much,
Kathleen, for having me.
Congresswoman Julia Brownley, for talking to our listeners about a few of the issues that are motivating women to come out here to march and to continue seeking justice for all.
Thank you.
Congresswoman Julia Brownley. And we're in the women's room, reporting today from Plaza Park in downtown Ventura at the Justice for All Women's March. I'm Kathleen Good, and this is KPPQ LP Ventura 104.1 FM.